Hi there, friends, and thank you for taking a few minutes to watch this interview. I am so excited. We have the privilege to talk today with Dr. Carolyn Weber, who has written a beautiful book, which, when I read it a few years ago, I thought to myself, this would make a gorgeous movie. Guess what? I wasn't the only one with that idea, because now there is a movie called Surprised by Oxford. And let me tell you, because I've seen it, it is gorgeous. It is filmed in beautiful, historic Oxford, England, and it shows all these beautiful buildings and some of the gorgeous choirs, the churches, and you are going to love it, I know, because I did. So stay tuned for our interview and for information on how you can see Surprised by Oxford. My name is Jean Thomason, and this is Momentum Influencers Network. Hi there, friends. Welcome into the studio today, and we have a wonderful treat. Well, I'm more excited than you are because I actually know quite a bit about this wonderful woman, Dr. Carolyn Weber, who is the author of this beautiful book called Surprised by Oxford. This is her personal memoir and now has been made into a movie, which is gorgeous, and I can't wait to tell you about it and let you hear more about it from Dr. Weber, whom I will call Carolyn because she has invited me to. Welcome into the studio today. We're thrilled to have you tell us all about this book, and now we get to know about the movie. So please let us know how it was that you have written a book.
Oh my goodness. Well, I've never anticipated writing a memoir. I'm an academic, and but years ago, about 10 years ago, I think just after teaching students for years and having unbelieving friends and family, the story had really percolated for a while.
Yes.
So I ended up finally sitting down on a sabbatical and writing my book. And I only had 3 small children at the time, not 4, so I had a little bit more time, and I had support from friends who hid me away so I could write and think, and my husband as well.
Great.
And it came together as kind of more of a personal project, Jean,
Right.
than a project I set out to do thinking it would ever become widely read or ever become a film. I didn't anticipate that at all.
I found this book a number of years ago. I'm in a book club, and I'm not sure who recommended it to me, but I just thought it was so lovely. I love poetry, and I've always been enamored by just the idea of Oxford. My husband and I visited there a couple of times, and so I remember thinking years ago, wow, this would make a gorgeous movie. So and here we are. So you must be surprised by the movie about Surprised by Oxford. How did that happen?
Well, Ryan Whitaker, who did the screenplay for the film, adapted the book, says there's no way you can make Oxford look bad,
Wow,
and he's
yes.
absolutely right. It's a magical, beautiful place.
Wow.
And this book actually this film has the most cinematography apparently of Oxford ever shot.
Is that right?
So it is beautifully done, and it is a magical place. It's, that's not to over romanticize it. It's got, it's been there for thousands of years.
Right.
You feel like you're walking into Narnia when you enter the little, colleges and the hidden portals and things like that. So it really is, the setting itself is just like a character.
Right, exactly. Tell us how it was that you, being a Canadian, had the opportunity, which I know is in the movie and in the book, but to become a student at Oxford.
Wow, I didn't anticipate that ever happening either. But I ended up receiving a Commonwealth scholarship, which is, I guess, akin to a Rhodes or, something along those lines for Americans. And I had always loved literature, always loved studying, but I came from a middle-class background, like so many others. Kind of a home that ended up being broken with my parents divorced. I was working hard to support my family and my siblings. And to get through school, and absolutely loved reading and loved literature and loved ideas, and had scholarships kind of all the way through. But also it was, I would have said, sort of a medium-sized family, medium-sized city I was from, and sort of a mediocre sense of God as well. I mean, I think I came from kind of a loosely Catholic background, which died away when my grandparents passed, and my parents kind of growing more cynical about faith and feeling that it wasn't relevant. And so by the time I went to college, I was pretty much, I would have said, an agnostic maybe not atheist because I couldn't disprove God, but certainly not somebody who took Christianity to heart or trusted in an eternal Father when my earthly one was in and out of our lives.
Absolutely. I know that's something that many people struggle with, is an idea of a good father figure when you haven't encountered that in your personal life. So do you feel like that influenced your situation as far as thinking about God?
I think so. I mean, we all have different gifts and we all have different woundings. And my father was someone who I loved very dearly and who I knew loved me, but who also was very broken and wounded in many ways and not dependable. But I also think, that there's a way in which our lives, we want to be dependent. I know I wanted to be self-sufficient. I wanted to make my own way, carve my own way, not be dependent on anyone or anything. And also really believed in answers to things, and intellectualism being the answer. And I really felt like faith couldn't be in the same hand as intellect.
So with that thought in mind, you're going to Oxford, which is the golden seat of intellectualism, maybe in the world. So how is it that you came to intersect and find how intellectualism intersected faith at a place like Oxford?
Well, hence the title.
Right, exactly.
Surprised by Oxford, which was drawing on Lewis's Surprised by Joy as well, but I was completely surprised. I mean, I arrived there studying world religions for my master's at the time, and studying world literature and that sort of thing. And I think, like all of us, really having a longing, knowing that I was longing for something more in my life. I think we all do, and that makes us very human. This desire to be known and loved and seen, but not really always able to articulate that. And I started to meet Christian friends. I started to read more deeply world history and ideas, and which is actually, there's a profound Christian intellectual history that is not always, we're made aware of in our public school systems. My idea of Jesus, Jean, was someone, who was a big-haired TV evangelist who took your money.
Oh my goodness.
Right? Canadian mainstream media, or really an empty person, maybe something not relevant at all, someone not relevant. So having those categories challenged for me by people I knew and I liked, from all over the world. It's a very cosmopolitan graduate school as well, that they could all believe the same thing, and that they could also be walking this talk. Really spoke to me, as well as what I started to read and was sharing and talking about with these friends.
I love that, and I actually wrote down something that I heard one of your professors say to you, and I thought it was so beautiful, and I want to ask you to talk about this, but he quoted John Donne, or he paraphrased him or something, but he said, "Truth indeed is strong, and you will know when you are properly ravished by it." Can you talk about that and how that pushed you in the direction of finding truth?
Yes. Well, I think there's so many little seeds that are planted along the way. And one of the things I had studied was John Donne's sonnets when I was an undergraduate, but of course, by no means a Christian, if anything, even quite antagonistic towards it. But these sonnets are really moving, and he does talk about being ravished by God's love. And he uses paradox a lot, being pushed and pulled and burnished and yet made new, and his attraction to God, but also rebelling against him. And I really identified with the humanity of that, that it's not a simple thing being human. There are, ways we're drawn to things and ways that we break them. There's things we long for and things that we lose sight of. And I found the sonnets to be so human, and something was planted, but at the time I didn't realize what. And then later, sort of being called out on that, not resting in it being trite, but really wrestling with the truth of these great thinkers and ideas, forced me to look more at myself and at the truth that I was seeking.
So was C.S. Lewis in Surprised by Joy, would you say that was one of the bigger influences?
Absolutely. As I got to know Lewis better. At the time when I arrived at Oxford, I didn't know Lewis's breadth of work and his range of work. I knew him primarily through Narnia Chronicles, right? As we all do. But those are really wonderful things that open the door to such. But I ended up, I was drawn. I ended up reading later on his Surprised by Joy. I read many of his works. I was introduced to it through actually a book called A Severe Mercy by Sheldon Vanauken.
I'm aware.
Who'd been friends with
Yes.
Lewis, and it was a beautiful book. That was one of the first books a Christian friend introduced me to before I was a believer. And I was tremendously moved by that book. And I wanted to know more about Lewis because of how he is cited in that book as an influence in some of the letters in that book. And I was really drawn, though, to Vanauken's description of, he had also been atheist or agnostic and had rejected the faith in that as well, but eventually becoming a Christian because of his wife, and looking at his life and recognizing it wasn't so much a leap of faith as it was a falling back.
Ah, I love that.
And that was more of where I was at, that there was this gap between me and Christ, and I couldn't deny who he was. It was also conversion by negatives. And that really moved me. And so I feel like then I wanted to get to know Lewis more and more. But of course, he takes the title Surprised by Joy from Wordsworth. And I was studying the Romantic writers. And it's a beautiful poem by William Wordsworth that talks about still the joy we feel in grief, how even grief and joy can be held together. Amazing. And they remind us of something that we were made for.
Oh, my goodness. We have a friend who has written a song called Homesick for Eden, and has that same exact, that all of us are homesick for Eden. We yearn to return to a land we've never seen. And so I think along those same lines. Well, how did you find the pomp and circumstance? In the movie, I loved the fact that you have to go to church, and they say they quote Latin, and they do all those beautiful things. And did that feel like a foreign world to you? I'm sure.
Oh, it did.
Yes.
I mean, I had attended an Anglican college on my campus, but so there was something beautiful about the rhythm of even song and things. But you're by no means mandated to participate in the Church of England or anything like that. But I think it's very difficult to ignore church bells.
I guess it is. That's quite loud.
They're beautiful, and they mark out the time and the day, and there's something about paying attention to the numbering of our days and the rhythm of our lives, and the music that underruns things, that even science has shown us is there.
Oh, isn't that
Sings everything, sings. So I was really moved by the rhythm of things, going to evensong and having that kind of way that my day came to a close, and I was reflecting on things, reading the creeds, learning the creeds, what they actually meant and said, that the purpose of God would be to enjoy him and glorify for him forever. Amazing. No one had ever said anything about my purpose. So that's why we talk in the film about the telos, the Aristotelian notion of having a purpose, something that you're created for, and that changes everything.
So all these things were little seeds planted along the way. Was there a big aha moment when you said, "I must give my life to Jesus"? Did you have
I did.
That?
I mean, I think some people do, some people don't.
Right.
Again, it's all stripes, right? All different types. For me, I did have a moment where the city of God and the city of man really came together. Amazing. I just had a moment where I realized I do not want these empty things. And there was a moment of really kind of, when I was reading the beginning of John, it really spoke to me in the word becoming flesh. But I think there was also a small boil in which I kicked a lot, like Lewis, being the most reluctant convert in England.
Yes.
I, kicked and raged against it for some time because it's incredibly inconvenient to be a Christian. It's really inconvenient to pray for your enemies and love people even when you're not in the mood, and to follow this person who is incredibly wise and radical and against what the world would have us be. And it's terrifying too, and yet there's nothing else more beautiful and worthy.
Amazing. So now that your beautiful personal story, the journey that is yours, has been made into this movie and available to the public, what are you praying and hoping that people will see through? What will they take home from the movie?
I so appreciate that question. That they would be surprised too.
Oh, good. I love that.
That they would be surprised as well that God's love is steadfast and greater than we can ever imagine. And he meets us where we're at. Jesus shows us that. So if we're within the faith and we have questions, that's fine. He's not a fragile God. And if we don't have faith, it's okay to ask the questions that matter and sit with those too, and sit with ourselves. That we could go in the movie theater and be moved into a conversation between us and our own souls, or with somebody else we've come with, but that the questions are important. The questions are where we live, until everything is revealed to us.
That's so good.
And we're not alone in those questions.
Oh, that's wonderful. Okay, I also know, before I forget, you have a cameo in the movie.
I do.
So tell us about where can be a spoiler alert that we might see the author in the movie.
Oh my goodness. It was a hilarious idea. Ryan had this fantastic idea. It was sort of an inside joke of having me deliver the same speech, part of the same speech that I heard the very first time I went to a C.S. Lewis meeting.
Oh, wow.
In the same building in Pusey House, and in the same room in the same building.
Amazing.
When I was first thinking about the faith, and friends had invited me, and I was really trepidatious and unsure of these crazy Christian people, let alone someone like Lewis, and was really moved by the talk and walked home along the cobblestone streets digesting all of it and not sure what to do about it, and really being drawn to the notion of longing, sun-soaked, that as you were saying before, that homesickness,
right.
the German word that Lewis uses, that homesickness we have for something that we recognize but we haven't fully experienced or been, but we're made for. And that, I couldn't unhear it, couldn't unthink it, couldn't unsing it.
Couldn't unsing it. I'm thinking of the scripture in Ecclesiastes that says God has set eternity in the hearts of every person. So there's a longing in us that Pascal says that it's a God-shaped vacuum that only he can fill.
Right, absolutely. And as Lewis says, how we would all change if we really did fully recognize and hold in front of us every single person we meet as immortal.
Oh my goodness. Oh, that's so wonderful. Well, I want to talk to you for hours more about this. This is so much fun, but mostly we want to make sure our viewers find out how they can see this movie. So tell us how they can see the movie, and when is it available?
Well, from what I know right now, it's available in November through Vimeo.
Okay.
It was in theaters for specialized showings, and so you can go to the website for the movie Surprised by Oxford and get information there. Okay. And then afterwards, I'm not sure what the path will be forward. There is something forthcoming, apparently, an announcement about how it'll be available or what. But for now, it's through Vimeo.
Through Vimeo, great. Well, friends, I'm so glad that we all got to have this visit with Carolyn and find out more about her story personally and just her walk with God and how God used what she was interested in. That's one thing that I really love, because God is going to take whatever we have and use it as a means to draw us to himself. And so that is how God drew you to himself, through the people at Oxford and through the beautiful words written by poets and novelists and all the writers and the romantics. So I hope that you will take the time to find this movie, Surprised by Oxford, and you might even have time to spend a few hours reading her beautiful book with much poetry and beautiful words in Surprised by Oxford. And may the Lord do for you what he has done for so many, and especially for Carolyn, surprise you. And may you find your faith in him and be drawn to him and understand his love and be, like C.S. Lewis said, surprised by joy. And not just life, but in the movie, as they said, abundant life. Thank you so much for joining us today. Do you have anything else you want to share before we leave?
Oh, no. Thank you, Gina. It was lovely. I think he does work through our loves and our desires and through our woundings as well.
Absolutely. Thank you, Carolyn. Thank you.